this is the last thing I do. We gonna get married because we got a baby together. There's no way you're gonna leave me. A lot of the stuff that they were doing was just based on culture and it wasn't biblical. Prune me, remove things, change my mindset. I give up trying to hold on to this thing that you're clearly trying to tell me to let go of, you know? Hey guys, what's popping, what's crackalacking? Hope you guys are good. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. My name is Amina and I create mainly vlogs, but I also like to talk about a few different things as well on my channel, including faith and my relationship with my daughter as a mom. Just really fun, cool things, you know? Check out my other videos and you kind of will get the vibe of what's going on over here. In this video, I have felt that God has placed on my heart to share my testimony. Those of you who have been watching my videos, or if you follow me on Instagram and you see the content that I share on my stories and also in my posts and even on TikTok, you may have gathered that I am a Christian. I'm a believer of Jesus Christ. I have accepted the gospel of Jesus Christ into my life. Jesus is my Lord and Savior. It's something that I do share. It's something that I do enjoy talking about. I feel like it's something that I just cannot not talk about, if that makes sense, because it's very much a part of me, it's part of my identity, it's who I am, it's part of my lifestyle, it's a huge part of my life. And to be honest, if it wasn't for my relationship with God, I would not be sitting here in front of you filming this video today. Okay, so it's very hard to not talk about something that is such a huge part of who you are as a person. So yeah, you guys would have already gathered that I'm a Christian, but I haven't really shared how I became a Christian and what that process and what that journey actually looked like. And I feel like my journey is something that a lot of people can probably relate to, or maybe aspects of it you can relate to. And I pray that in me sharing this, that you are blessed, you are encouraged, and you are inspired in your own walk and your own relationship with God. And if you're not a Christian and you're watching this video, you're just curious, you're just here to just listen, I still hope that you are blessed and encouraged in some way through this video. I'm going to try and keep this as short and sweet as possible because it is a very, very long journey that I've been on in my relationship with God. My first experience or any kind of knowledge of God was probably when I was about 8 or 9 years old, when my mum just randomly decided to start taking us to church. All of a sudden, we are now going to church every Sunday, and my mum would be waking us up. She'll be telling us, come on, get up, get ready, we gotta go to church, put on your sutana. Those of you who are Nigerian probably already know what a sutana is, but just to explain, the church that my mum was going to was something called a white garment church, and it's basically a church where they wear all white. They will just wear these dresses, like these gowns, and they'll have like a band or a tie around the waist. Not gowns as in like you're going to the Oscars. It's more like, well, actually, to be honest, it could be a white garment church gala. The way some of these dresses would be popping with the sequins and the design. You know, Nigerian people don't play when it comes to putting some material together and creating some amazing clothing. You know what I'm saying? But basically, it's kind of like the uniform of the type of church that it was. So we would go to church wearing these all white clothing. We had white hats on, we had to cover our head. Me going to church with my mum was basically me just doing what my mum was telling me to do. All I knew is that we would go to church, they'll be shouting and praying, people will be falling over, and we will be there for hours. Like, we'll go in the morning and not come back home till the evening. It will just be one long event that we would go to every Sunday, and that was pretty much all that it was for me. And then one day at one particular service at this church, I remember quite vividly me and these other kids were messing around and just basically making fun of the adults, because we would always come there and see the adults shouting, jumping up and down, dancing, people falling over, people talking in this weird language, which obviously I now know as speaking in tongues. For us, it was kind of like amusing, you know, as kids with nothing better to do. In us entertaining ourselves, we decided that we were going to make fun of the adults and start also jumping around. Now, I started doing that, and for whatever reason, I literally couldn't control myself. It started off with me kikiing, laughing, giggling, jumping up and down, pretending as if I was making fun of these adults, to me suddenly kind of feeling like I was in a trance. I just felt like I was in a trance. I couldn't control my body. And I would say that that was probably my first experience of something spiritual taking place on the inside of me. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what was going on, but I just knew that in that moment that I had limited control over my body. I wanted to stop doing what I was doing, but I just couldn't. From that moment, the pastor of the church basically took me under her wing, and she was trying to teach me what was going on or what had happened, trying her best to kind of guide me and gain some kind of understanding about the spiritual experience that I had. I used to spend so much time with her at her house. I used to spend summers with her, and she really grew into becoming like a real auntie figure to me. And in that process, over the next few years of me growing and developing this relationship with my pastor and her family, my church at the time, I was learning how to pray. I was reading my Bible. I used to read my Bible from Genesis to Revelation literally every single year. And to be honest with you, I did not understand what I was reading when I was reading my Bible, but all I know is that I was being taught all of these things about this God, this spiritual experience that I was having, because after that one time that it happened, it kept on happening. I eventually started like speaking in tongues and doing all of this like spiritual stuff, but at the same time what I found was, and what I now know in hindsight, is that I didn't really know God for real. There was always that element of me kind of doing all of these things, like going through the motions of reading my Bible from Genesis to Revelation year after year, praying, speaking in tongues, going into this trance every time I go to church services, without really having a deep level of understanding or deep knowledge of who God was. It really just felt like I was doing things because that's what I'm supposed to do. This same church that I was going to was a very African church. When I say African church, some of you probably already know exactly what I mean. It was very African. At some point, we actually stopped wearing the white garment clothing. The pastor decided that we no longer needed to be wearing it, and everyone would now start wearing just normal regular clothes to church. But that kind of really African culture was very much ingrained into the way that the church did its services, in some of the like ritualistic and cultural things that took place in the church. It was very heavily based on Nigerian culture. Prayer in that church is like shouting, chanting, and constantly repeating the same thing over and over again, constantly battling. Like the way we talk to God was very much like a constant battle. Like we're fighting for our blessings, we're fighting the enemy, we're just constantly fighting. You have to pray and you have to shout and you have to scream, you have to like recite Bible scriptures over and over again, like you have to repeat yourself over and over again. Like it's kind of like a chanting kind of vibe, very African cultural in the way that it was. This was the only type of church I knew. I didn't know that there was anything else or anything different. I just assumed that this is what church is, and me being a Nigerian person, this is what Nigerian churches are like, and it is what it is, you know. So that went on for years. I literally grew up in that church, from, you know, being an 8-9-year-old to being a teenager and getting pregnant at 17 and having a baby at 18, which is a whole other story that you guys can watch in a video that I have on my channel, 17 and Pregnant, How I Told My Nigerian Mum. You guys can go check that out. Those of you who know me already know that I had my daughter very young. I was at this same church when this whole experience occurred in my life. I would say that by that time and by that age, I definitely had some sort of acknowledgement of God and his existence. I believed that God existed. I believed that Jesus died on the cross for me and he took away all our sins. All the things that you're supposed to believe as a Christian, I believed it. I prayed, I talked to God, I was speaking in tongues. I was still having really strong spiritual experiences experiences at church and even praying by myself at home, I would definitely call myself a Christian because I did have knowledge of God and I did believe the things that the Bible said. But I feel like there was definitely an element of me not fully understanding really poignant things about my faith, but kind of still going through the motions and having this really religious standpoint in my walk with God. But even in that religiousness, I still had actual spiritual encounters, I would say, with God, and I did feel close to God to a certain extent. But in hindsight, I can definitely say that the knowledge and the understanding of God that I have now, I did not have back then. When I met my daughter's dad, I was 16 at the time. I got pregnant at 17 and I had given birth by the age of 18. That season of my life was literally the turning point of my whole testimony, my whole experience from religion to relationship with God. My daughter's dad was my first boyfriend. I lost my virginity to this person. Coming from a Nigerian household and having a Nigerian mum, you don't talk about sex, okay? That's not a conversation that you have with your mum on a casual Saturday afternoon, okay? And then going to a church that didn't really talk about this kind of stuff. So you can see how my journey and my walk with God was very much religiously reading my Bible, religiously praying, religiously being in the spirit, like religiously doing things without really having practical guidance from the Bible about how I should be living my life. Yeah, so that whole process of me getting pregnant, I didn't go to church for a while. I was ashamed, to be honest with you. I actually stayed with my daughter's dad for the majority of my pregnancy because obviously my mum was really upset. I didn't want to go back home. I thought she was going to kill me. So I actually spent a lot of my pregnancy living with my daughter's dad in his parents' home because obviously we're both kids. We were both 17 at the time. I still prayed. I still talked to God, and I was still very much having sex. I was still very much in a relationship with my daughter's dad, had my daughter, and we continued our relationship up until my daughter was about 2 or 3 years old. Now, prior to us like officially breaking up, I eventually went back to church. I was also trying to convince my daughter's dad to start coming to church. Like, he would say he was a Christian, but he really wasn't. So I would try and convince him to go to church and for us to go to church together and all that kind of stuff. That's what I've been taught to do, to go to church. You know, that's just something that you just do. It was very much a battle to try and convince him to come to church, but I would still go nonetheless with my daughter. On one particular service at church, there was a different person that was preaching, this other guy, and he was basically talking about fornication. I remember thinking to myself that, oh, this is a different type of sermon. I've not seen anyone preach a sermon on a topic like this. In him preaching this message, I came to understand that there's something called fornication and God doesn't want us to do it. And it's in the Bible, the same Bible that I've been reading from Genesis to Revelation for years. And to me, it was like, hold on, if this is in the Bible and it's written in black and white, why is it that for how many years that I've been reading this same Bible that it just never clicked to me? Like I felt like I'd never seen this verse before in my life. I'm pretty sure I've read this because I have read the Bible from back to front, from Genesis to Revelation for many years. You know, I know my Bible, you know, but for some reason in him preaching this message, it kind of felt like I was hearing this for the first time, and I was literally hearing it for the first time. I'd never seen anyone preach about fornication in my church in all the years that I'd been going there. I remember leaving that service and asking my pastor's husband, who was also like an uncle to me, and saying to him that, you know what this guy was preaching about, this fornication thing, is that what I'm doing with my daughter's dad? And he basically looked at me and said, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. I kind of thought to myself, okay, so no one thought to tell me this before? If this guy hadn't preached this message on this particular day of me coming to church and hearing it, would I have ever known? Like, was anyone gonna tell me? Like, well, like, what's going on? It kind of felt like, yeah, that's what you're doing, but you know, it is what it is, you know, kind of thing. And I was immediately convicted. Immediately, on the spot. I went home, I prayed, and I said, God, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to fornicate. And I feel like that was probably the first time that I prayed to God and it felt like I was actually talking to God about something from my heart. Because before then, when I prayed and talked to God, it was very repetitive. The same way that they prayed at church is how I prayed at home. It was very repetitive. I said the same things over and over again. It was really difficult for me to just talk and just share my thoughts and my feelings to God. I felt like I needed to follow this religious pattern of how to pray and what to pray about when talking to God. So when I had this conviction, I just immediately was just like, I don't want to fornicate anymore. I don't want to do that anymore. And I told my daughter's dad that, look, we're not having sex anymore. Like, I don't want to do it. And there was literally nothing he could tell me to change my mind. My mind was made up on the spot. I don't want to fornicate anymore. I'm done. Like, I'm not doing it. Unless we get married, it's not happening, right? Now that led to a whole catalyst of drama in my relationship with my daughter's dad. Like, there was so much drama. Like, these are things that are like a whole other story time. You know, there's like a whole other story that I can't even get into. But just know that literally from the moment that I made that decision, there was just so much heartache. I was kind of in a battle of wanting to hold on to this relationship with this guy because he was all I knew. From the age of 16, first relationship, first, you know, sexual partner. I had a baby with him. I literally went from being a 16-year-old teenage girl to growing into womanhood, growing into motherhood with this guy. So you can imagine the way that I desperately wanted the relationship to work, but at the same time I was just so convinced and so convicted that there's no way that I wanted to sleep with this guy. And he would try, but I was still very much set on that I didn't want to actually have sex unless we got married. And there was a whole crazy drama that took place where we almost got married, but then we didn't, and I was heartbroken. Like, I was broken. I had idolized this person. I had idolized my daughter's dad. Like, I just couldn't see myself existing without him. I couldn't see myself going forward or like just move on with my life without this person. And I tried so desperately to hold on to him, but also trying to be obedient to God and not fornicating. I literally tried to force him to become a Christian. I tried to force him to go to church. I tried to force him to jump on this, you know, celibacy journey with me. All of these things because I desperately wanted him. I desperately wanted us to work. I had made a decision within my heart, said this to myself, that the person that I lose my virginity to is the person I'm going to marry. And I was holding on to that. I was holding on to that like it was, it is the last thing I do. We gonna get married because we got a baby together. There's no way you're gonna leave me to raise this child by myself and go on with life by myself. Like, you're all I know. Like, I don't want a relationship with anyone else. Like, the soul tie was serious, okay? The soul tie was strong. Like, I literally had idolized this person, and I felt like in that season and in that time of all this drama and heartache and resentment and bitterness, us breaking up, getting back together, breaking up again, then getting back together, trying to make it work and then it not working, him trying to sleep with me and then me saying no, me trying to push boundaries to keep him happy but also feeling guilty because I knew that what I was doing was wrong because I had this really strong conviction. And it was just this constant tussle. I was really desperately just trying to hold on to this thing that God was trying to cut away, you know? And because I was so desperate for it to work, it literally forced me to really start talking to God. It forced me to stop just praying in a religious way all the time. At that whole situation, God really used it to draw me close to him. And although my motivation for getting closer to God was because I really wanted this man to be my husband and for us to live happily ever after with our child and all this kind of stuff, God still used it to help me to draw closer to him. And I started talking to him more. I started really pouring out my heart, and like, there was no one else that I could talk to about what I was going through. I couldn't talk to my mom. I couldn't really talk to anyone about it. I didn't have friends or anyone around me that I could really talk to about it. Looking back, that time of my life was very, very very traumatic. Mind you, at the time, I was still very young. I was in my early 20s. I was probably depressed and didn't even know it, you know? I was going through so much, being a very, very, very young mum, having this small human that I needed to raise, and facing the fact that I would have to raise this child by myself. I could have done with therapy at that time to help me process, unpack those things and really talk about those things. And even now, therapy is something that I'm definitely looking into. So I would like to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. For those of you who do not know what BetterHelp is, as in BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, they are the world's largest therapy service and they are 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 30,000 experienced and licensed therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. To get started, all you have to do is answer a few questions about your needs and preferences in therapy. That way, BetterHelp can then match you with the right therapist from their network. You can talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's through text, chat, phone, video call. You can message your therapist at any time and also schedule live sessions whenever it's convenient for you. And if for whatever reason your therapist is not the right fit for you, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. With BetterHelp, you can get the same professionalism and quality that you would expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist that has been handpicked for you with more scheduling flexibility and at a more affordable price. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/thisisamina, as you can see on the screen. I'll also put the link in the description box for you guys. Make sure you go check that out. I'm definitely going to be starting my journey in therapy with BetterHelp. I think that sometimes as Christians and coming from a very religious background, we tend to shy away from therapy and we don't understand that there could be so many benefits from therapy. It's not there to replace our faith in God. It's definitely a tool that can be used to support our journey and have a conversation with someone who is a professional and is there to listen. I had no choice but to talk to God. I had no choice but to pour out my heart to God. Although the prayers I was praying were still very selfish and still very much, this is what I want, this is my desire. Through me just constantly pouring out my heart to God, it came to a point where I started to say that, God, if this is not what you want for me, then I'm leaving it to you. I'm releasing this person to you. I'm letting go. If I'm not meant to marry this person, if this relationship is not meant to work, I finally surrender. Like, I give up, okay? I give up trying to hold on to this thing that you're clearly trying to tell me to let go of, you know? My prayer started changing. After all the tussle and bend God's hand to please my desires, I eventually surrendered to God and said, God, let your will be done. Like, whatever it is that you want to happen in this situation, I'm leaving it to you. Like, take him. Take the man, child. Okay, take him. Whatever it is you have in store for me, I'm accepting it. It's fine. I've had too much heartache. I can't take it anymore. And if it's done, it's done. Okay, I'm gonna continue on this walk by myself and continue, you know, waiting till marriage, raising my daughter and focusing on myself. I needed to figure out my life. I needed to figure out, what am I doing with my life? It's like, once I finally released that relationship and just let it go and gave it to God, I was just so focused on myself. I had to learn who I was because my identity was so wrapped up in this relationship. So God really used that time to prune me, remove things, change my mindset and empower me to really pray and talk to him and develop an actual meaningful and deep relationship with him. Probably why one of my favorite Bible verses is, all things work together for the good of those that love God and are called according to his purpose, which is Romans 8:28. So many things have happened in my life where I've had to look back and realize that God was actually working everything together for my good. And in that process of me coming out of that religiousness to real genuine relationship with God, I ended up leaving the church that I was going to. It was very bittersweet because I genuinely loved and still care for the pastor of that church. As I said, I grew up in that church from being 8, 9 years old to being in my 20s. I had developed a very, very close relationship with the pastor of the church and her husband and her family. There was a very significant thing that happened. I don't even know how it started, but I found myself watching the God channel on Sky TV. I don't know how I ended up on this God TV channel, and I was obsessed with this channel. I went through months of me just watching God TV, and honestly, I learned so much about the Bible from watching that channel. It's like my eyes were opened to a different type of Christianity that I had never experienced before in my life. I had grown up in this super religious, Nigerian cultured, intertwined type of church, and I didn't know anything different to that other than like maybe a Catholic church. But watching God TV and the different shows that they had on that channel, different pastors that were preaching, different topics that they would discuss. They were the TV podcast shows before podcast was even a thing, okay? God TV was like my Christian YouTube channel. I was watching shows after shows after shows, and the reason why I was so like locked into all the things that they were sharing was because it felt like I was learning my faith. I got to genuinely know the history of the Bible. I started learning about Jewish culture. Jesus was actually a Jew. It really felt like I was learning the actual like real intricate historical aspects of Christianity, like the theology, knowledge of certain things, facts about certain things, which really intrigued me in a really authentic and deep way. There was like some guy that was a scientist, and he would talk about the Bible from a scientific perspective. There were historians. All of this knowledge was just coming to me through this channel, and it literally woke me up to really understanding God, really getting to know the Bible. It felt like all the years of me reading my Bible from Genesis to Revelation, it felt like I knew nothing, literally. Like I felt like I don't know this Bible that I've been reading. I've been reading it with such a religious mindset that I wasn't really getting the spiritual food from this word of God. You know, it was like stories. It was like just words on a piece of paper that I was reading and reciting and repeating. There was no like genuine revelation, which probably explains why I didn't know that fornication was a thing, because although I'd read where it talks about fornication so many times, it wasn't until that moment where the Holy Spirit convicted me that actually like felt like the Bible was alive and actually speaking to me. During this time of me watching God channel and learning so much about the Bible, it really felt like the Bible was becoming alive to me. It was more than a book. It was mysteries about God that was just being unveiled to me. It was just anchoring me so much in my faith and in who God was. Like I started to see God in ways I'd never seen him. I started to get to know God in ways I'd never known him. It was at this time that I saw how so many things in the Old Testament pointed to Christ. Like everything about the Bible is about Jesus. Everything in the Bible is about Jesus, okay? I got so much revelation, so much deep revelation. I just couldn't be the same again. The Bible was real. The Bible was alive. God was real. I knew him in all his majesty, and also understanding the purpose of life, God's kingdom, why we exist. The more I went to my church during that time, the more I felt like a lot of the stuff that they were doing was just based on culture, and it wasn't biblical, and that really started to bother me. I really just started to disagree with the way that things were being done in the church that I was going to, and that kind of caused offense. I just started to feel like as if I didn't belong in that church. I wanted to go out and evangelize to people. I wanted to go out and feed the homeless. Like I was just so moved by this revelation of God that I had, and just being more like Jesus and the disciples in the Bible, that I didn't feel like my church was on the same page as me. I wanted to go to a church that was doing those things and would allow me the opportunity to do those things as well. It just seemed like when I went to church, I wasn't being fed spiritually, but when I watched God TV, it felt like my soul and my spirit was being fed. And I decided that I wasn't gonna continue going to my church, that I wanted to find a different church to go to. I started praying and talking to God about finding a new church. I asked God to lead me to whatever church it is I need to be going to. This was my first time actually going out alone to try and find a church for myself, actually seek God for myself and find a church that I wanted to go to, a church that would meet my needs for where I was at in my walk with God. And I ended up at the church that I go to now, and I've been going to for so many years, like over 10 years now. And I remember the first day that I stepped into this church, I felt so much peace, and I just knew deep down in my heart that God wanted me to be in that church. And literally the same week that I started going to that church, they were doing evangelism. Friday evenings, they would go out to feed the homeless, and I would go with them, like home cooked food, like rice, meat, chicken, all that kind of stuff. And you have a bunch of homeless people just lined up waiting for us because they knew that we would be there every Friday. Literally have worship on the street near Trafalgar Square, worshiping God, praying with these homeless people and giving them food. And it really impacted me in such a way that I knew that I was no longer stuck in this bubble of religion. I genuinely had a relationship with God. God has been the most consistent person in my life. I've had to depend on him my whole entire life. Even from when I was born on the floor, by the way. I was literally born on the floor on a rainy day in Nigeria because my mum clearly didn't make it to the hospital in time. I somehow contracted pneumonia. In the process of me being treated for that, I literally almost died as a baby. Like, the doctors literally told my mum that I wasn't gonna make it. I had to have a blood transfusion and everything. I literally had to depend on God to survive because the doctors were saying I wasn't gonna make it. Everything I've been through in my life, I've had to depend on God, and I will continue to depend on God because he's always made a way for me. He's always been there for me. He's always guided me. And it's not just about what I can get from God. It's not just about, you know, seeing God as some genie that I can just rub on and he will just grant me all my wishes. God is real. There's no way that I can do this life without him. I just thank Jesus for my life. I thank Jesus for my salvation and the opportunity to have real relationship with him. He came for that purpose. He came so that we can get into right relationship with God. We belong to God. We came from God. Our identity is in God. Our whole existence comes from him. Nothing can replace God in our lives. Absolutely nothing. God is it. The creator of heaven and earth and everything, the creator of the universe. Nothing in this world can ever satisfy, because our true and genuine satisfaction can only come from our relationship with God. We'll never know who we truly are until we get into a right relationship with God. My Christian faith, my walk with God has been a very, very long journey, and there's been so many things that have happened in my life, but I'm thankful that I was able to go through those experiences because those things taught me so much about myself, but most importantly, they taught me so much about God and who he is. There's no way that you can encounter God and your life remains the same. And that is a lifelong journey. I'm not saying that I've arrived and I'm this perfect Christian. No, no one has ever arrived, okay? And no one will ever arrive, even until when Jesus comes back. We still won't have arrived, but it's all about your heart posture. It's all about you being open to really and truly living for God, really and truly allowing God to impact your life. This Christian walk is a journey. Our relationship with God is a journey, and I pray that we all continue to wake up and truly get into right relationship with God and be free from religiousness, free from just doing things because, oh yeah, you say that you're a Christian and you think that, yeah, being a Christian is just praying and talking to God and asking God for things, and really get into a relationship with God where you ask God, what does he want from you? What are the things that you need to let go of? What are the things that you need to release? Lean into the convictions that you're having about certain things and really allow him to impact your life in a way that you have never experienced before. There's a whole life in God that you need to tap into, knowing that everything he does is for our own good, knowing that he has your best interest at heart, and understanding that what you might think you want and what you might think you need is really not what you want or need. My daughter's dad may be a great dad to my daughter, but he's definitely not what I would want in a life partner or in a husband today. Knowing who I am now and knowing how different I am as a person to who I was back then, I can see why it wasn't supposed to be, you know? okay, God, you was right that I didn't marry this person. No shade, no shade. And that's the beauty of God. That's the beauty of really trusting God, because God knows our future. He has our lives in his hands. He knows us more than we even know ourselves. Back then, in my early 20s, he knew who I would be now at 38. So yeah, I can trust God about every aspect of my life. My faith is anchored in him, and very soon I'm also going to have therapy, okay? Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope and pray that you have been blessed and encouraged by what I've shared, and thank you also to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Again, please make sure you check out the description box for the link to get 10% off your first month with BetterHelp at betterhelp.com/thisIsAmina. Link is in the description box, as I said. Make sure you take advantage of that 10% off. Yeah, I feel like this video is going to be one of many more sit down chatty videos that I want to be doing on my channel. I know I do a lot of vlogs. I've been doing a lot of vlogs for a while now, but I don't want to lose that element of my channel where I get to sit down and talk to you guys about so many different things. There'll be more to come. If you have any questions or you want to share your own experience, please do so in the comments. I definitely read the comments and I always respond as well. Yeah, I'd love to hear some of your experiences. If you can relate to my journey, let's chat in the comments, okay? Thumbs up, okay? Because that's where YouTube is able to push this video for other people to see it and also benefit from it as well. You gotta share the goodness, okay? Share the blessing. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, also please do subscribe. I feel like I've been on the road to 100k for 100 years. Yeah, it would be great if I can eventually get to 100k at some point. So yeah, if you're not already subscribed and you're watching my videos and you're not subscribed, this is your reminder to hit that subscribe button, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye guys.